And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Isle Bob. Your sensei, here to talk to you about things we don't talk about, right? And why don't we? Because we're scared. We're scared on how people relate, what they'll say, how we'll be treated, how we might be threatened, right? But if God, we were, created in the image and likeness of God, and if we are our better selves serving, you know, God's unconditional love as a slave, and that's what we should be—a slave to love. Love's co-creation. That's what we should be doing. Not thinking about what people think about us, what new judge see this. This is as long as it smells okay, I wear it, right? And this I got at Walmart's for 50 cents in the women's section, right? Pretty much half my clothes are women's because they have a 3 to 18 weeks stuff cycle through the rack and to make space to get rid of stuff. This was 50 cents. I bought 3 of them in different colors, right? They fit me, they keep me warm, they cover my body, and brand new. These clothes are made out of really comfy stuff, where men's stuff, not so much. Men are supposed to wear things that restrict them and annoy them and keep them in a place. Hello, Al. Hello. Mr. Jamie. And anyway, so here's something we don't talk about except when we're making fun of it or trying to explain it away or being disinformation, right?
Filed a complaint with the Pentagon because of the suppression of UFOs, of craft that the United States has in its possession, alien bodies, etc. This information is being kept from the American public. His name is David Grush. Apparently has the highest level of clearance inside the Pentagon. And there's been mixed reaction to his whistleblower testimony coming forward and talking and telling the world about this. What was your initial response to seeing this? Because you have a lot of experience dealing with these whistleblowers who've come forward to reveal similar things. What did you think this week when you saw this?
I thought it was very significant that, firstly, that story that was published in the debrief was first passed by the New York Times, Politico, and The Hill. And the authors had to run it through the debrief, even though they had previously published in the New York Times similar stories with their kind of rigorous background checking of the witnesses. Straight away, you get a clue that there's some kind of different factions involved in this kind of issue concerning UFO crash retrievals and reverse engineering efforts. And I think what we saw with David Grush's testimony is that there is a faction of people.
Hey, Dr. Drew, my wife Susan here. We want to show you.
I block no one, right? So basically, whatever you say is what you say, and I appreciate everything that everyone says because I want to and I push the wrong button, right? So I've tried to stay away from those little dots over there because one time I just opened it up and people took over the channel and I couldn't do anything. I'm a pinhead. Very cool. Yes, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing, right? And I am here. I am called to do this by God, as we are all called to live our lives by God, right? And what is God? Is it any specific ideology or liturgy? And what is liturgy? But you take it back to the Sumerian root. It's litigation. That's why the Jews had Pharisees. They were, the lawyers of the Torah, right? So, and they had different versions of the Torah too. They were the tribes, plural, and they did not become the Jewish people. And Israel as a people. And these things were added on. God never quite, and you didn't have to get your wick dipped and clipped to be a Christian, right? But a lot did, Paul lost his cookies on that one, and if it wasn't for Paul, we would not have Christianity. We definitely sure wouldn't have the King James Bible, right? So, because there were so many currencies, right? There were so many denominations of religion, of who is God, right? And my God's better than your God, right? And so denominations like $5 bills, $10. Keep, I thought you might have blocked me for mentioning Lloyd George and what he said about AH and the anti-German propaganda, right? And the Nuremberg Law, forth by the National Socialist Party, the Nazis, after they came to power, not by they were actually voted in, but then the Nazis just kind of became the stormtroopers of their capital, their legislature. And then one night, oops, it burnt down. And the Nazis blamed the Jews and the communists and the socialists and put them all in camps, and brought out the Enabling Act, which is their version, or the Patriot Act was our version of the Enabling Act, right? Straight up, right? So, anti-German, no, we are as Nazi as you get. So are the English. The English are like, ow, upper high paperclip. Yep. And basically, that was Hail Hydra, meaning the whole concept of the Second World War was a continuation of the First World War. And the folks who bankrolled the First World War were the people who, bankrolled the Boer War and, the Spanish-American War. And it's, good old Ike tried to tell us about the military-industrial complex, and it's not just in America, Look at tiny little Sweden. They make some of the best jet fighters there are, and that's why we want them in NATO, Let's see. Institution was a gift this time around. Jesus gave the gift of reason. Yep. And, forgiveness is the only we can stay alive. That's why I'm a slave to God's unconditional love, and I get to it through Jesus to give us a good example of what we should be doing, right? And so did Buddha and Vishnu and all of the other Christs, right? And you look at every people's, especially indigenous people, they all have a singular God. They're all as Christian as you can get. I would love most modern Christians to be as Christian as Islam. I'd love to see Christians praying 5 times a day, stopping whatever they're doing, and facing the Vatican or wherever, and getting down and prostrating themselves to God. That's what Muslims do. I'd love to see that. I think intention will get so strong that it will be clearly seen. Right. Because the whole thing back when, we were in the beginning, all things were dark, and then there was the word. What was that word? Love. That was the word, right? And in the garden, basically everybody was vegetarians. The lions didn't eat the zebras, and Hail Hydra. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland right here with Sensei Al Bob. It's Sunday, and I'm off to fellowship in an hour or so we can kick this around. Mumbles. I love mumbles, right? So basically, all those wars up to the First World War was about all these nation states, all these kings, how to get rid of those imperial entities. Look, he got rid of the czar, put in, socialism, communism. Who wrote that? Engels, bills. How am I going to pay my bills? As St. Johnny Boy says, Well, who's paid for Marx to come, out of Germany and come to London, city of London, not just the city, but the city of London, where all the money was Mr. Rothschild. Put them in a nice big house for the rest of their life. Sent all their kids to private schools, right? And what did they write? But Das Kapital. What was that? It was an ideology that was used. Russia, anybody who was communist, or the loyal opposition. Look at China. You couldn't get any more loyal opposition than those guys, And because, we can hate them and go toe to toe up to going to war, and we have to build a new missile for it. We ain't going to go there because China can't take Taiwan, Just like the real, if you Vlad having existential fear about being invaded, well, where did he get invaded from with the Nazis? From Poland, right? There are about 5 doorways into the flatlands of Russia. Once you get into Russia, man, it's all flat and you can go like hell's bells, right? And that's what the Nazis did. But they wanted to, go after specific things rather than respond to the mechanism of what was in front of them. Hello, bye. And basically, if you read, you realize that Adolf Hitler was taken. I mean, he was a nothing, a nebbish, and he was rewired to be a poster boy. You listen to his speeches in the Nuremberg rallies. They make no sense, but they are shamanic PowerPoints that are basically, they had crowds of 300,000 people out there, and this big field, and the stage was concrete with these concrete, things that look very much like the Georgia Stones, and they were set up so he could walk out. The sun would be setting behind him, and he would walk out, and his shadow would go across the folk, right? And the propagandists would say, "Oh, the Fuhrer is going to speak at Nuremberg Saturday. Get there by 9." And they get there by 9, and it would be sunny, and it would be sunny, and it would be sunny. There's no shade, just open, no trees, these big concrete columns, and people would, die of heat prostration. But that was like a spiritual experience for these people, right? And so, just as the sun is setting, Adolf, and the whole time over the PA, there was a low, extremely low frequency that you couldn't really hear, but your gut could. And, you have 3 brains, the cottage cheese between the ears, your heart. Oh, I had a gut feeling about this. And so these speakers were like rumbling the gut, and it would drive people nuts into hysteria, right? And then the sun's going down, these big columns and the shadows were going across the folk, and Adolf would come from behind one of him, and his shadow would go across the people, and they would hit the switch and take off that low rumbling, and everyone would have orgasm, right? And this is straight out of Wilhelm Reich's book about orgone energy, right? And that's what the Germans did. How did the Nazis, a small group of very fringe people, nationalist socialists, how neocons basically, and you don't have to be a Republican to be a neocrats, and those guys are neoliberals. Same thing, right? It's based on an ideology to control you, right? And the only way you can not be controlled is to be a slave to God's unconditional love through Jesus's doorway of unconditional forgiveness. And this ain't liturgy. This ain't religion. Now, the Bible It's a tool. It's like a hammer. It's not a contract. If you check off all the boxes, you're going to heaven. No. Already, God has forgiven. God, made an image of likeness. When Moses was up on the hill looking after his sheep and looking at the stars and going, boy, am I a lucky guy. I got out of Egypt 20 years ago. I found this really beautiful chick. She's my girl. And, my father-in-law is brilliant, and I am, lucky I can talk about theology all day long with him and have sweet loving with my honey bun. And then I come up here on the hill and look at the stars and appreciate the love of the sheep. And then all of a sudden, boom-o, there's the burning bush. Yo, Moses, hey, get over here. Yeah, what do you want? You got to go back to Egypt and free the Hebrews. Why the heck should I do that? They totally dissed me. They ran me out of town. They cracked my good gig that I had with Pharaoh. Pharaoh loved me more than his son. I was happening. I was the dude. And everyone started talking smack about me and putting out, well, that's what I want to talk about. I got 10, 15 rules, right? Maybe 20, but at least 10, right? And here, one is, love only me, right? No false gods, right? And no killing and no screwing around with your neighbor's wife, no stealing, lying, and especially do not diss your neighbor. No false witnesses, right? And on and on and on, right? And basically Moses said, who cares? I don't, that's over. And the burning bush, really? You're not interested? Then why do you talk to your father-in-law about theology? Why do you go on and on and on? Why do you say prayers to me? Why do you talk to me all the time when you're up here? Why do you think I'm here? Because you're always talking to me. And I'm listening. So you do this little thing for me. And because what are you talking? What the Hebrews, they're happy. They love the golden bull. They love they're middle managers, they're bankers, there's lawyers. They fit right into Egypt. Why should I even care? They aren't really your people anymore. They're not Israel, that's for sure. And that's what you have to free them from. You're not going to Egypt to crack them out of being slaves where they're cleaning the toilet. No. No. They have Africans for that. And in essence, the Egyptians are Africans, so are you, So what I want you to do is go there and get them on the trail, get them on, back on the relationship with me. I'm lonely. I need you guys, right? And Moses, what do you have? They're never gonna, why would they even want to? Let's see, time, man. I'm here twice. Right. I go by pronoun bye. Bye. I go by the pronoun Al Bob, So, my eyes are going blind because I'm doing it incrementally, right? So you don't just go blind, bing. Well, if you have an accident, like the other day, I was getting out of the car and I hit the corner. It made this thing into a point. Look at this, right? Look at that. Look, point right now. This right here. I whacked myself right in my temple right there. I saw a star. Oops. And I had just had surgery on my eye. They had just, whacked the little blood vessels in the back of my eye with a laser. So I was already seeing everything as purple unicorns. And then when I got, because I couldn't see the edge of the door, bang, Uh, well, it's interesting to see everything as geometric shapes, no longer, the illusion of what we think we're seeing, because that's all it is, kids. It's an illusion. The material world is an illusion. Sorry to tell you this. Humans have the worst sensory devices. Our eyeballs, see that much of the spectrum, right? Our ears, hear that much. Our nose, dogs have smell-o-vision, bats have radar ears, um, ears. Anyway, so our senses are the worst because everybody was connected. We were the we in me. We now have so distracted ourselves by materialism that we don't have that. We make up for it with our brains. I mean, I was a volunteer fireman. I got a lot of training. It's just skill. Sure, we'll pay you even better. We'll put you up in a hotel. Surgical. Yeah, I don't know what to call them now. But that meant because that out of the vehicle and to us. And I was doing this. I was working at Cornell University, and they had one of the Cornell's the best of everything. It kills every other school, right? And they're so good. They're on the down low. They'd rather I just saw something floating by there. Let's see. We'll make up for it with our brains. Buddy, I went out to the apartment. We only did one fire. And as we were driving up to it, it was a big farm, a tank of natural gas that they actually kind of made themselves from chicken shit. And they made all the fertilizers for corn. It was a very nice closed loop system they had. And so, and they were burning hydrogen. They had the methane from the chicken shit, and they also were creating hydrogen, right? And making their own electricity. I mean, it was quite a sweet thing. I kind of helped them do that. But anyway, we got the calls, the ambulance. That's what I drove. And we were about a quarter mile from the place, and that tank blew up. And it was, the tanker truck into that. Put all this in here. No, we're gonna, county